I was born in 1980, and because of that, I feel quite lucky. I'm not saying that I grew up in some kind of golden age, and I'm certainly not saying the past was perfect, because it wasn't. No, I feel lucky because my mind was formed before the internet moved into every corner of life, and before we had to start living in the digital landscape. Long story short, I had an entirely analog childhood. And the older I get, the more I realize that may be the biggest advantage I've been given. Because the transition to digital living didn't just replace old technology. It removed some important conditions that human beings need to thrive. So in this video, I want to highlight some of the benefits that pre-digital living gave us. And to be clear, this isn't a my generation is better than yours type of thing. It's not. It's just an exploration into what analog living allowed. Anyway, enough of the introduction, let's dive in. Okay, first off, when I was young, choice was limited. You watched what was on TV, listened to what was on the radio, and played with games or toys you owned. Basically, you worked with what you had around you, things that physically existed in your house or in your friend's house. That might sound restrictive to some younger people, but it's important to remember that limitation creates depth. In fact, it's always created depth. We've just forgotten to appreciate that. When we had fewer options, we had to squeeze more out of them. We replayed games or played with toys until they broke. We knew them like the back of our hands. We reimagined things into something new or remixed uses. Yes, we still got bored, but that's kind of the point. That boredom forced us to be creative with what we had. This can be seen across countless periods of history. Great musicians and singers were born out of poverty, and soldiers during World War I created amazing pieces of art out of the things they had lying around them. Limitation initiates a valuable process in humans. Nothingness is something we're hardwired to deal with really well, and that process matters. Boredom isn't emptiness, it's a doorway into our imaginations. When what we have around us offers less, our inner world, all that crazy creative stuff buzzing around inside our minds, has to offer more. Unfortunately, as a society, we've done everything we can to subdue that process, not to intentionally limit us, but as a byproduct of progress. Consequently, today, the situation has been completely upended. We now have unlimited content, unlimited recommendations, unlimited scrolling, basically unlimited options. That must be better, surely. I agree, it does sound as though it should be better on paper, but in many cases it isn't. This is because people feel paralyzed by limitless choices, distracted by an abundance of options, and restless as a result. Put simply, having more choice doesn't automatically make us happier. We've been sold the idea that more choice gives us more freedom, but it can actually make us less content. The reason for that is that all too often it leads to pressure. Pressure to choose correctly, pressure to optimize everything, and pressure not to miss out and to keep up with everyone else. And in the pre-internet age that I grew up in, identity was often built by making the most of what we had. Whereas today, establishing an identity has, for a lot of people, become a never-ending browsing exercise, curating elements of what we're fed to choose who we are and choose who we want to be. But identity shouldn't really be curated from the content we're fed. It should be created from within. Another gift the pre-internet world gave us was privacy. I experienced a private offline life from the moment I was born until I was in my late 20s. You could say daft things, dress badly, I still do that one. You could try on identities, you could fail socially, and importantly, you could embarrass yourself. Then most of it vanished into the mists of time. It didn't matter. To be clear, that's how humans are supposed to grow. It's how we evolved in the physical world, observed by just a few friends and family. Doing so gives us time to experiment, misjudge, overreach, retreat, learn, and slowly refine ourselves into adults. But now most young people grow up in what I'd describe as a partially public environment. Mistakes can be and often are filmed, opinions are shared and archived globally. Moments can spread beyond their intended audience in just a few seconds. Even silence can feel performative. Once our brains become fine-tuned to being observed, they kind of recalibrate to cope with it. How can that not change development? How can that not change how we live? Because if every mistake is potentially permanent, risk naturally becomes scarier. And if risk becomes scarier, authenticity begins to retreat. We become frightened to be ourselves, just in case being ourselves in the moment somehow impacts our future. Many people from older generations were allowed to be rubbish versions of themselves before becoming better ones. I am one such person. And I'm so grateful for that. That freedom to mess up was invaluable. It gave me room to become who I am today. But now, sadly, many feel the pressure to be the final version of themselves from a very young age. We've constructed an environment that's counterproductive to our own development as a species. And that, I think, is a massive shame. The thing I probably miss the most, because it's a real challenge to try and get it back, is the slower rhythm of life that we used to experience. Back in the 80s, 90s, and even into the early mid-2000s, we waited for programs, waited for letters, and waited for weekends. We waited for someone to ring or for photos to be developed. We waited for things to arrive. Waiting sounds negative in a modern context, but that's only the way it appears to be on the surface. Drill down a bit and you realise that waiting gave us an almost unspoken benefit. Anticipation is one of life's richest emotions, and yet we do everything in our power to try to remove it. Instant streaming, instant delivery, instant gratification. But when everything is instant, anticipation cannot exist. And when anticipation disappears, so can gratitude and the joy of relief. Technology has given us speed, but speed doesn't directly equate to well-being. In fact, as a result of our obsession with speed, many now live their lives moving from one micro-urgency to another. Reply now, update now, react now, consume now, move now, and think now. And on top of all this sits something that I, as a teenager or someone in my 20s, never had to deal with in the way young people do today. Uncertainty. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an illustrator, and that pathway ahead was fairly clear. I obviously knew that tools would improve. Computer-aided design was already fairly widespread by the time I was about 12 or 13. But the profession and most other professions existed in forms broadly similar to how they had always been. Scientist, filmmaker, musician, teacher, these roles evolved slowly, relatively speaking, and because of that, the basic shape of them hadn't changed for decades. Today, children dreaming of a future profession will likely find it's been radically altered by the time they reach adulthood. And because of AI, in some cases, those dream jobs won't even exist. Living in such a fast-moving landscape affects the nervous system. Humans are adaptable, that's one of our most valuable traits, but we were never built to live in a state of perpetual instability. And so yes, I grant you, predictability may sound boring, but having a baseline of predictability is the cornerstone of contentment. And the world that we've built makes achieving that baseline harder with every passing year. This isn't a criticism of younger generations, far from it. It's a criticism of systems that are beyond our control, and intentional changes that disregarded things that we always knew gave life meaning. In some ways, it's a small digital love letter to a non-digital world that's now all but disappeared. But it's also a warning about what we can lose in the never-ending onslaught of technological progress. I think younger generations have inherited a psychologically demanding environment, one that many older people, myself included, will never fully understand. And that creates a disconnect and a messy landscape for everyone. Baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z. And to be clear, I'm not saying the past was better. The past had countless problems, not least limitations that held people back and a lot of unfairness. But I am saying that some aspects of analog life were important and deeply compatible with the human mind. Less choice, yes, but more imagination, more privacy, more patience, more stable expectations, and also, importantly, more room to become ourselves slowly. And now these things are gone or they've eroded. Either way, is that progress? I'll let you decide. Importantly, we can't go backwards, and neither should we try. But what we can start to do is to move forward more intelligently. Instead of disregarding every old way of doing things, we should be more selective. And also we can reflect on which parts of modern life are helping us and which are affecting us negatively. That's something we don't do nearly enough. Because the problem is that progress isn't just about what technology adds. It's also about what it takes away. So this week, try to find one moment where you choose the wait over the instant and see how that little bit of anticipation actually feels. And I'd also love to hear what you think about all this. Did growing up before the internet shape you differently? Or are you from a younger generation and feel like you gained something else, something important? Let me know in the comments below. And if this video made you think, why not subscribe to the Layered Future channel? Layered Future is about tech's impact on the human experience, so come along and join the journey. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.